everybody. Welcome back to the Women in Trades podcast. We're here with a special guest. Some of you may know her. Her name is Marisa Samuel. Marisa, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into the HVAC field?
So I got into the HVAC field through my husband, really. He started a HVAC sort of side hustle with his brother. And as they were kind of like moonlighting, we'll call it, while they had their day jobs, as it got busier, it needed some organization and all this paperwork kept hitting my kitchen table and they needed somebody to organize it. So at the time I worked part-time. I have two daughters, they were little, and I was like, you know what? I'll organize you. So I opened up QuickBooks and I started working on the financial side, manually putting in these customer jobs that we were doing. And here I am. I guess that was, oh gosh, I can't even tell you, maybe 12, 15 years ago. And so that's how I found my way to the trades. And so I've been here for a while.
That's awesome. Did you have any like prior experience before you jumped in, or?
No, no background in the trades, no background in bookkeeping or financials or software, IT, nothing like that. I was a hairdresser for many years, and that's where my whole grown up career was. So very different from what I was doing. Yeah.
It's very impressive.
And so obviously it went from a side hustle into a full-time commitment, right? Tell us a little bit about that experience and decision.
Yeah. So I was keeping up with all the paperwork, all the bookkeeping, but there's sort of like, as you're building a business, just this natural progression. Like you're just hanging at one level and then you feel the bubble about to burst and you know you have to like evolve or do something different because you can't sustain what you're doing at that level anymore, which is a blessing, but also sometimes a curse because it could be fast. And that's how it was for Adam Mechanical. So I continued doing everything from my kitchen table for about 3 years. And then we got to a place where we needed somebody in an office to answer phones, just one person. So we hired an office manager. I still needed to keep my day job for income. So we hired this office manager, and then I took all the responsibility of just the financials. And doing that about another, I would say probably another year or two before we were at that next level where it's like, okay, I can't sustain part-time children plus now what feels like a full-time job. So I transitioned and went full-time at Adam Mechanical in 2015.
Awesome. And then Adam and Sila merged and joined forces.
Yeah, at the end of December. So December 2021 is when we joined the Sila brands. We were acquired. Yep.
Awesome.
Awesome. How was that process?
Oh my gosh. So that was another full-time job for going through a due diligence. It was especially, obviously, I'd never worked through selling a business. And, fortunately, we did have Service Titan. So I brought on Service Titan in 2016 in January. It was the first change I made when I went full-time to Adam Mechanical because I was this financial manager. I'm looking at all this information that's coming over to the finances, and it's from this old software, and it's just like making a mess. And I'm like, I got to change it. So anyway, going through selling to Sila, it was much easier having Service Titan because we had a lot of our ducks in a row, we'll say. But that process, it's not only was it like, it's a lot of work, I'll just be honest with you, that due diligence piece, but you're also, you're parting with something that carries a lot of like your time and emotion. And I mean, you remember it when it was at your kitchen table, and here you are getting ready to sell it. But it was the right time, it was the right company. And so it made it a lot easier to say, all right, we're ready for this step.
Absolutely. And you mentioned something about how like Sila helped with Service Titan. Can you tell us a little bit about that? How they were like, supportive with Service Titan as like a software?
Yeah, so Service Titan really is what helped with that Sila transition because we were more
Oh,
organized.
okay.
Like Service Titan had gotten us to a place where we had good processes in place. So my financials were cleaner because the information flowing in was cleaner. Whereas, prior to Service Titan, I had a lot of cleanup to do from the old software, created a lot of mess that I had to work through. So it was really reverse of that. It was really Service Titan that set me up better to be able to go through that due diligence and sell because I had, cleaner financial records.
Okay. So why don't you how should we should talk about the Center of Excellence?
Yeah.
So how did that come about?
Okay. So the Center of Excellence, COE, that was already the idea existed when Sila offered me the position to be the director of the Center of Excellence. And so, sort of what happened is through that due diligence, I spent a lot of time with Sila, and I guess seeing the way we use Service Titan, and that I had at that point had been on the software for 5 years. And then I was, helping my husband and brother-in-law build this business and had a leadership role at Adam Mechanical. I guess it just made sense to them. And so they were like, okay, we have this idea of a center of excellence. There's 3 people who are part of the center of excellence, but, why don't you come on board, direct it, and, form it basically. There really wasn't any blueprint, I guess, so to speak. It was just the idea, and I love the idea because it made sense, even at shop level, like somebody has to take responsibility for Service Titan, for the software that's going to drive into your financials and help you make all these decisions. Like somebody has to be the gatekeeper, and then you end up just naturally at shop level. It's like, oh, well, you're touching dispatch all the time, so you become the expert of dispatching. You're touching memberships all the time. So the idea of the Center of Excellence to support all these brands, it made complete sense. It was just kind of what you do naturally at shop level, but on a larger scale.
And I just wanted to say too, building that from the ground up, I mean, I'm super, super impressed with where you are now.
Thanks.
Today. Yeah, your department, I feel like is just so organized and really building upon itself. And there, you can see the progression.
Yeah.
How do you manage that? And
it's funny because I know that a lot of that just came from the beginning when the Sila leadership team, again, there wasn't a blueprint, but that's like the beauty in it, is that it was, here it is, the people working it, the people directing it will be the ones to build it, which makes sense. I mean, we're like at ground level, we see what the needs are and we meet them with solutions. I say all the time, like our team, the COE, we spend more time laughing. So we are like laughter and solutions instead of like pouting and problems, because there's a lot. It's a lot of moving parts, and especially building something it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of hours of work. It takes a lot of creativity. And when you're in a space that allows for all that to happen and people are sort of thriving in their own space, like it's bound to be good. It can't go wrong.
yeah, that is so true. Now you're in a top position as director of the COE. So I know that you're, Adam Mechanical was acquired by Sila, but you always have options, right? So why stay with Sila and accept that role? And now you're here. It's 1.5 years now. Later?
Yeah, it's going to be 2 in March, beginning of March. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So it's funny because after we sold, I was just going to help with sort of like the crossover, that transition of back end of everything I did, peel the layers off. And then I did always want to own my own business. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to open a salon. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back to my roots. And then this job offer came up, and I just could not look the other way because one, I have always, like, as nerdy as it sounds, I've always loved Service Titan. And I think the reason I have so much attachment to it is one, I lived in a mess that Service Titan cleaned up. And not only that, it was in 2016. It was nobody's coming to your shop. I wasn't even doing like Zoom calls. It was like a phone call with this guy, Anthony, just walking me through it. So I sort of built out our Service Titan, like the price book by hand. Like everything was just so built out. And I just saw so much of what it did for our business to make it better that I just grew this attachment to it. And honestly, I left this creative job that's, it's hair, it's the fashion industry, it's all that stuff that, I mean, it really does still speak to my soul. But so, and then I'm in this very rigid financial, which I did like, and trades, which are totally different. But then Service Titan offered me like creativity again. I was like, oh, here's this software. Oh, we need a process better for follow-ups. I got it. Let me look inside Service Titan. I'll find it. So it offered this creativity. So when this job offer came up for me to still have my hands in Service Titan, which was my favorite part of my job at Adam Mechanical, I was like, yeah. And by the way, this sounds like a challenge and like something I've never done. I don't know if I'm the girl, but okay, because I like a good challenge.
Absolutely. Yeah, so you mentioned that you used to work at a salon and you were thinking about opening up a salon of your own. And I was curious, have you experienced any obstacles going from with hair and it's more of like a female, woman predominant trade versus HVAC, which is kind of male predominant? Have you experienced any obstacles switching between trades or?
Yeah, I went from a space where I had a very successful career. And I knew a lot about it. And then I went into this space where every day it was new and I couldn't speak the language. It's like I could
Mhm.
speak color language all day. And then I started realizing what my clients meant when I would be like, grab me a 7A and 20 volume. And they'd be like, oh, you sound like a scientist. I'm like, it's not. But then I would sit with all these guys, really, and they're like naming parts and copper fittings and elbows and all that. Like, what is all this? So that was definitely a challenge. As I felt limited in that I did not know the field. I didn't know the language. So that was definitely something different for me. But it's funny that when you say going from a very female dominated industry, and it was, but I think that's where I learned to watch women in leadership. Without that experience, I would not have been exposed to so many women in leadership. So I'm a big believer that, like, even when it doesn't make sense, like, your journey is building up to your next. And I look back at that, I'm like, that's why I needed to live in that space. I needed to learn about women in leadership and what that looks like, what that can feel like.
I like that.
I'm sorry, can I just ask, so what specific types of things are you realizing now that you learned in the moment from these other women in leadership? What, like, just.
Yeah, 100%. So over my course of doing hair, I spent the most time in these two salons. And in that first salon, the woman who owned it was an innovator. She was so far ahead of her times. It was like early 2000, I think it was 2000. And she had this gorgeous spa in Chestnut Hill, Philadelphia, that had like Bikram yoga and spa services and a boutique. I mean, her idea, her concept was just like nobody was doing that. So watching her and watching how successful she was, I was like, oh, women can. Like, they can do this. Then I left that spa to follow one of the girls who opened her own salon. And Rachel was just a different personality. And I learned from her that, like, not only can women do it, but you don't have to be apologetic. Like, she owned it. She was proud of it. She was fearless. She was tough. And she didn't like make apologies for being that way, you know? So I feel like those two women had the biggest impact on me. Women can, and you don't have to be apologetic for it.
From that, what are like some tips that you've extracted from these women in your life that have helped in leadership? Do you have like one or two things you fall back on?
I mean, specifically from them, um, I think it was more the experience of working in a salon. I mean, you're even in their leadership, they were in it. You know, we moved together as like one unit, and I feel like in any area you work or you lead, and there's sometimes obviously is this sort of separation because you can't be doing the same job as everybody on your team, right? But when you are working as one unit together, it really, that's the only way to move forward. So I feel like that experience of just this sort of collaboration and constantly like throwing ideas off of each other, and again, all about hair, right? But it was still this like collaborative effort to get to a good end result, and everybody had interest in the next person's best interest. I feel like subconsciously I guess I was being trained to know that it is always like one unit, like it's a team. Like you have to stay together, you have to move together. So I would say, yeah, maybe that's a tip that I picked up not knowing, but just looking back, that's that's probably it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's huge to have a cohesive team and work
Yeah.
together. That's incredible. That's all we
Yeah.
want.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like too, like learning that from like your past experience working in a salon, you can definitely tell with the Center of Excellence that you've utilized those principles with like this new organization too.
Yeah. Yeah. We are very much one unit. And I mean, 100%. And I wouldn't have it any other way. You know, I spend time in it and I spend time on it, but especially when you're developing something or growing something, if you think that you could just stand back and work on it from the outside, like it's not going to go where it should, or how successful it could be, because you only know what you know. So until you are in it, you don't know what could be done, what can be done, where we can improve, where all the problems are, and how we can create solutions. And I think too, having that relationship with your team, I mean, that's everything. It's 100% everything.
So circling back a little bit to the COE, where do you see the COE going? What's the future trajectory?
It's a tough question because as Sila grows, so will the COE. We meet Sila and the growth where it's at. We move forward alongside of Sila. So it's a kind of a hard question, but I would say the future of the COE, I really see all the champs and everything that's being built. This sort of becomes an expansion of the Center of Excellence. We just had the opportunity with Service Titan for the champs to have their own Sila Spark sessions and have working time with Service Titan. So I really see the more that we're doing, the more recognized Service Titan, the more recognized we are at Service Titan, and the more opportunity that flows into the Center of Excellence. So the more support we get, the more we can support. So where is the COE going? I mean, we have such a good foundation and it's so simple, but it's our support platform. It's our areas of expertise. It's our champions. Like, that is our base, and we will just build up from there. And watching the champs grow and get their opportunities, it just grows out and up. from that foundation. And I think that's anything that you're building, like you've got to be solid there. It's got to make sense. It's got to be simplistic, and it's got to be something that whatever you laid at that foundation can be built up or built out.
That's super true. And I love how closely you're now working with ServiceTitan. And I know that they appreciate even just the concept of the COE.
Yeah.
And it's such a great partnership, really.
It is. They've provided a lot of, I say opportunity, but yeah, like just right before this call, we were sitting with, one of the developers from the membership team that's like, tell us what's wrong. Or like, how much time do you have? But, how can we simplify this? Well, we've got a lot of ideas for you. And the exposure we have to so many different brands and hearing what their challenges are, I mean, it's such good information. And that's why as it grows out, and like when I was talking about the champs and stuff, you just become a larger pool of knowledge. And all that behind one motivation, I mean, it puts us in the front of a lot of things, and we're able to grow, faster and better for it.
And while we're on the ServiceTitan topic, I mean, I would think that even now, 2024, early 2024, even the tech world is still very much a male-dominated field.
Yeah.
So do you have the opportunity to work with other, women leaders, maybe within ServiceTitan, or, any insight into how that functions over there as well?
Yeah, I feel like there's definitely, ServiceTitan has a lot of, now that I'm just like going down a little list, but yeah, I feel like there's a lot of women in leadership there for sure. And maybe it's just because I am a woman, so I'm connecting with all these other women, But as far as the tech world, it's funny because I don't even feel like I work in tech, but I guess technically I do. But that is, like you're saying, it is more of a male dominated field. But when I'm exposed to ServiceTitan, which is the only like pulse check I could really get, I would say there's definitely female leaders there for sure, which is awesome.
It really does say a lot about those two companies, that women can, work and grow and thrive in those environments within those companies.
To segue into a work-life balance, how do you successfully manage your successful career while also raising your family?
Oh, okay, so I will be honest, I'm not great at that part. It's hard sometimes to, especially again, when you're in the new of something and you're building something, it takes a lot of your time. I am at a place where my girls are older, so they're 17 and 15, but listen, they need their mom just as much, right? So while I'm not always the best at that, what I am, and I'll give myself credit for, is that I'm a person of communication and honesty and transparency. So I have conversations with my daughters to say, hey, listen, I recognize that things are a little different right now. I don't cook dinner as much anymore, but like, you guys all right? You see me over here, I'm doing something. Like, are you okay? Like, there's a lot of those conversations, and a lot of like, how are you feeling? Is my presence enough? I'm sorry, I was traveling this week, but hey, like, this weekend, let's make a plan. Let's carve out Saturday afternoon. What are you girls doing? Let's connect there. So it's about making new effort in new areas to do things. Like I took them to New York on a girls' trip for 2 nights, just the three of us, and it was amazing. And so while maybe I'm not cooking dinner every night and I'm traveling a little more, those moments, and it's funny because that was my one daughter, her feedback was like, well, Mom, it's like, that's true. You're not, around quite as much. She's like, but we wouldn't have New York. If you were there every night, then you wouldn't take us to New York. So I think the balance changes, and maybe that I'm not like, I have to make sure that there's enough hours in the week that everybody is being served. It's more, let me serve you in different areas, but also let's stay in communication because I got to check in on you. Like
Yeah.
you're my number one, you know?
Yeah,
So I think that's how I'm balancing.
absolutely. And I mean, I can't even attest. I don't have kids, so I can't attest to probably what is the hardest job is being a parent, but it sounds like you're doing a fantastic job checking in with them. Plus, you're being a great role model for them as well. You know, like chasing
It's
your
funny you say
dreams,
that
right?
because we talked about that at dinner actually in New York, just
Oh,
exactly about that. That, kind of talked about my career and how different it was. And, my one daughter's getting ready to go to college and just talking about how, your journey, your hard work is what you put in that gets you to the places that you're trying to get to. And that again, like you can be whatever, you can do whatever. Like you're not limited by your background, you're not limited by your gender. Like the world is yours. Take it however you want.
absolutely. So do you have any positive influences or any role models?
I had to think about this, and it's not really just one person. I think it's women in general that are leading or doing or going after something that they believe in, and they're taking ownership for it or leadership in it. So I was thinking about it. I'm like, it's the moms that I come across, the women that are leading the PTO at school. Like, thank God for them because I can't be that woman. And so that to me is like an inspiration. Like they do for the school, they lead for the school, they do for our children. And I'm inspired by that. And then, I look at my daughters are heavily involved in cheer, and there's all these moms who dedicate their time to like making the experience amazing for my daughter. So I'm inspired by that. And that's leadership in different ways. So it's all my girlfriends who start side hustles and work to get toward their own business, or maybe it stays a side hustle, but again, I'm inspired by that. So I don't think it's any specific person. I've come across a lot of amazing women, but I don't think it's any specific person. I think it's any woman who takes something, makes it her own, creates something out of it, owns it, and takes it on like a boss. That's who inspires me.
All
So,
right.
just like a not a side question, but just another question. Do you have any advice or anything that you'd like to share with people within the company or without the company that could benefit them in furthering their career and getting to where they want to be within that career within this company?
I think you have to always stay focused on where you're at. Even when it feels like this doesn't make sense, I feel like I'm like on a hamster wheel, I'm rinse and repeat every day. Believe me, there's probably a reason, you know? So I feel like sometimes people stay in their moments and can't see ahead, and we can't. Sometimes we really can't. And you question yourself and you wonder and you think about your next, and you always should be. But sometimes you have to, like, when you're in that and figuring that space out, you have to be in the space you're in and doing the best that you can and finding the win inside of that. Like, okay, I'm collecting more knowledge. Okay, I'm learning discipline right now. Like, find what it is that's actually happening, and not so focused on like, this isn't where I want to be. I want to be over here. Great. Work for that. But make sure wherever you're at, you're learning, you're able to sort of identify that it's more than just what you're actually doing. It's building for something. And I don't think I would have known that had I not had such a massive career switch from hair to something like what I'm doing now. If you would have said that 20 years ago, I'd be like, huh? Me? I don't even check my emails, you know. But I look back at that and I think all the conversations I had with so many different clients and learning about them and hearing their stories or whatever, I learned empathy. I learned how to talk to people. I learned about connecting with people who you wouldn't otherwise think I'd have any connection with, you know, because everybody, it's from all walks of life that sit in your chair. But all that stuff that I was collecting along the way, like I mentioned, the leaders, all of that was like, yeah, I needed all of that for now. So I think it is just recognizing that whatever you're in, you need it for the future you. And so don't sit and like hate on it or be impatient with it. Be in it, because I promise it's pushing you forward. If you're a go-getter, you're going to go get it, period, you know.
I love that. That's amazing advice. Master where you are and appreciate where you are,
Yeah,
and good things will come.
yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Marisa, is there anything else that you'd like to discuss with us today?
No, but thank you for this. I feel so honored.
We're so happy that you joined us.
All right.
Oh,
Well, thank you.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you so
Thanks
much
for your
for
thank
joining us.
time.
you.